Alrighty, everybody. It's a nice, 60-something degree day in January. And we're back on the Clark forklift here. So, last video, I was having issues with the propane system. I think specifically this mixer or carburetor. So, did a little digging and I found myself a gas carburetor online. I will try and link this carburetor in case you ever come across an F-163 and you need a carb, if this works in the end. So, just went ahead and pulled this off real quick before I started the video. I wanted to make sure that this carb was even going to work. And I mean, stud distance looked good. The only problem I'm seeing is I'd like to be able to use my stock air cleaner on this. So the carb needs to angle this way. Yeah, sorry, had to think. Carb needs to angle this way. So on the motor, it'll hang like this. And then, your throttle linkage here will stick out on this side. Where here, if it's hanging on the motor like this, the throttle and choke linkage are on the back, which is going to be a little bit of a pain. So I either need to run this backwards or change around all the linkages and stuff. So I'm going to get this slapped on there and decide on what I'm going to do there. All right, so I got the carb hung up in there. Bolt pattern does work, which is great. It physically fits in there. It's really close. The fuel inlet's on the back side of the carb now. It's really close to the block, so hopefully that doesn't cause fuel heating issues. I did decide I think I'm going to angle it this way because then I can use the original throttle linkage. I can access the choke to later put on a choke. I'll put on a manual choke probably. I mean, I say I'll do that. I won't. I'll just always reach in here and use the choke manually probably. I do want to put the air filter back on it though. But that's just kind of like a pretty easy housing that I could probably reroute and stick it somewhere else. Maybe run the tube all the way up here and put the air filter back here since I will no longer have the big propane tank there. So I need to find some actual nuts for those studs because there are different threads than the original nuts for the original mixer. And I need to find a fitting for the fuel inlet on the back. So I pulled it off again. So you can see, need to get a fitting to go in there for the fuel inlet. Overall, I spent $120 to have this shipped to my house. Took about 3 days. Kind of impressed. Doesn't look that bad, actually. We look in there. Choke feels good. Throttle feels pretty good. I mean, the casting's not perfect, as you can see, but hopefully this will work. So, I'm going to go find these nuts and try and find a fitting. Hopefully I don't have to run out to Home Depot for that. And we'll get this slapped on here and get a tank figured out. All right, so had to run to Napa and Home Depot. Found two fine thread. I think these were 5/16 -24 nuts. Ooh, almost lost one. 18 cents they charged me for two of these. Then we went to Home Depot and got the sketchiest fuel fitting setup I could. Problem I'm running into now, I just tried to mount this up there, and the distance between the carburetor and the side of the engine is really small, so I'm running into a problem with this being too long here. So, not sure what I'm going to do to overcome that yet. I'm going to try and probably grind this off. I'm going to see if I can crank this in one more turn. Really fun thing is, I just snapped that mixture off by accident. I wasn't even being aggressive with it, which is annoying. So, that casting looks really crappy. I don't know if you can tell that. So still spins, but that's gonna suck. Might reach out to Tractor House, who I think is who I placed this order through, and see if I can just get a new one of those adjusters. Anyway, we'll move on for now. Hopefully we can get it by hand here. It's probably gonna always want to move without having it spring there, but I need to solve this issue first. Okay, so ended up grinding some of that off, about as much as I care to take, and cranked it in absolutely as far as I could, and it just barely slips on there. So one last modification I got to make. I need to actually drill this hole a little bit larger so that the throttle rod will go in. It's not like this carburetor's meant exactly for this, so I'm not surprised I have to do these little sketchy modifications. So let me go drill that out a little bit, and then we'll slide it on there. Okay, so it's a new day here. It's not raining anymore. It's also not too close to getting dark. So, last couple clips you saw me put this carburetor on. Also, the fuel line ran. So, Next, we need a tank. And obviously, we're not going to be running propane anymore. So I'm going to do away with this mount. And then I have this little tank off of a Lincoln welder that I parted out a while ago that I'm going to throw on there. It's got that nice stand on it. So I'm just going to pull this off and then plate it, or bolt it right on here. And then I need to probably run out and grab some fuel line and a new filter. Then we'll have a good fuel hookup. Also need to, this now fits really well in here because I drilled that out. But I need to, this clip doesn't work anymore to retain it on there. So I think I might pull this rod off and just drill a small little hole for a cotter pin in there. Just like over here. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this pulled off and we'll get this thrown on there and bolted on. Worked out kind of nicely. Two of these lined up with the original holes. For now, I'll probably just throw vice grips back here. For now. Just because I don't feel like drilling the holes when I'm outside. Might as well do that when it's in my shop, hopefully once it runs. So, I'm going to throw some vice grips on that. Still got to find fuel line. And find a way to route that fuel line down here. Now, an important note. This machine does have a built-in fuel tank already. I'm not sure where the pickup is. It must be on the bottom. Usually, they're kind of on the top. The reason I'm going ahead, I already have this tank. Then I can just gravity feed it. This motor does not have a fuel pump on it, obviously. So just to eliminate all that, I'm just going to gravity feed it. I'll probably run that line right down through here. And hopefully it'll be nice and simple. And I have the spot for the tank. And it doesn't look that bad here, I don't think. So I'm going to go ahead and find some fuel line. And I'll get that ran. And we'll go from there. I got the fuel line hooked up on the forklift. Now I need some gas. So I already got a mixture of 2-stroke gas from my race bike. Now we're grabbing it out of the big wheel, which I think it just got everything it could get. So that's about 3 gallons. So that should be enough to start it. All right, tank's full, line's hooked up. We have fuel in the filter. This is gonna be the first ever 2-stroke forklift. Also just temporarily ran the zip tie here to hold the throttle on. I don't feel like pulling that whole linkage off to drill that yet. I'd like to see if this thing runs before it gets dark on me. So, throttle's hooked up, fuel's hooked up, carburetor's on. The only thing left really is this choke. That's some good looking fuel, great. Anyway, only thing left is this choke. It's sprung open. Without the air filter on, I think I'm gonna want it set closed. So I'll probably also zip tie that closed for now. Unless, actually, I should be able to stand here and hold it closed with my finger when I hook up my trigger starter to the starter, so I don't have to keep using the adjustable wrench like I was using. So let's get this hooked up, and I also need to repair a battery terminal over there. All right, so we got it all set up. So we're gonna go ahead and try and start it. Since that last video, I ended up pulling that carburetor apart and going through it, just because that seemed like that fuel that got to it at first was kind of nasty. I don't know if there was some junk in the bottom of this tank or what. I did run a little bit of fuel in this carburetor once the other day, trying to get it to run maybe before I had it all hooked up. So took it apart, cleaned it out, just to start with a clean slate hopefully. So also had to cut apart my trigger here. This used to be one of these trigger starters, which was really nice, but it's always kind of a piece of crap. Never really was reliable. So we just cut it, and once you touch the 2 wires together, it cranks that way. So we're gonna go ahead and see if we can get this thing to start. Turn the fuel on, got ignition hooked up. Well, that wouldn't actually do anything because it doesn't have an accelerator pump, but it's trying. It just seems like it needs a little bit more fuel or something. don't know how much of that you could see. Had 125 psi on the front cylinder, 100 on the second cylinder, which that was the cylinder that was originally open when I bought it. This cylinder was dead, so we're going to try and put a little bit of oil in it to see if we can bring it back. This cylinder was to 75. Another curious thing, when we pulled it apart, this cylinder was really wet with fuel. The front cylinder was kind of funky as well, but I had to pour some penetrating oil on it to get that plug out, so it's hard to tell. These rear two were pretty much dry, as if they weren't getting any fuel, so I don't know what's going on. Hopefully we can bring this dead cylinder back. So it definitely seems like it's down a cylinder. You can tell how crappy it's running. Hydraulics did work, and they had some power enough to lift the skid up. Didn't seem like it wanted to go in gear at first, but at the end there, it seemed like it was going to. So I need to check how much fluid that's supposed to have and see if that's an issue. And go from there. But at least it does actually run now. Gotta see if I can figure out how to bring that cylinder back, or if it's got a stuck valve or what's going on there. So that was about a month ago. It does run. It is down a cylinder, which I'm hoping is just a stuck valve. But before I pull the head off and dive into trying to free up that valve or just see what's going on in there, want to make sure the transmission works. So been tinkering with it this morning. It'll go, the shifter moves fine. I got this floor pan pulled off here. There was just 4 bolts. And I started looking into a couple things. So first thing I looked at was there's this little valve right here. And that has this line coming out and goes over here to the master cylinder. So from my understanding, that is tied in, basically that's like the actuation, yeah, that's the right word, for the clutch. And apparently it's a very common thing on Clark forklifts for this to go bad and the spring to wear out. I pulled that apart. The spring seems fine. Not 100% sure exactly how that works, but seemed like it was working. So kind of crossed that off the list for now. The next thing I saw was over here is this little electric, well, yeah, basically electric little switch. Not exactly what that's called, not exactly sure what that's called or what it does, but that made me start thinking. To get this thing running, I've been pretty much hot wiring it. I've got the coil directly wired. I hook that on the battery. I unhook it when it's not running so I don't burn up the points, and then I just hit the starter. Because I am missing the key. They did not give me the key at the auction. I'm sure I could probably punch out this and use a screwdriver, but so that made me start thinking. So I probed around here, found power on one of these tabs. One of these is a battery feed in, obviously, so that you can have power to the rest of the switch. But what I found is with this thing running, basically if you probe power over onto, I think this is the battery here, and then pretty much cross power over onto this one, that seems like it makes the wheels turn a little bit. It doesn't jump right into gear and go, but it does give me some kind of action out of the trans, so that's a good sign. Also, check the fluid level down here, which is right in here. And it actually looks like really good fluid. I think it's just ATF, really. It's a little over full, which could be an issue. Doesn't really look like water's in there, but could be, or someone just overfilled it at some point. But I know that has fluid, so I can cancel that issue out. So I'm kind of leaning towards hot wiring this, or wiring this switch over, or this wire that I think runs that over to the battery wire here, so that always has power. That way that can focus on just sitting on it and putting it in gear, and see if it'll then take off and go. And if it won't, I'm going to try all that and maybe give it a nice little tug from the backhoe. Hopefully kind of the momentum. Like I said, this thing's not running right because it's down a cylinder, so it doesn't have a whole lot of power. So I'm hoping maybe the nudge pull from that combined with my wiring fix here might, maybe get the transmission moving. So we'll figure that out. So I'm going to put you guys down for a second. I'm going to change the wires around on that and see if that changes anything. All right, so got it running here. Wired up through 2 wires together, the battery and what I suspect is the transmission valve. Still nothing. Didn't like that. I might have ran out of gas. But either way, it did not solve my problem. So, all right. So the video you just saw was taken in the winter of 2023, a little over a year and a half ago. And the reason we have jumped now into my garage and where I'm sitting in my Mini Willys Jeep that I'm in the midst of building is because that's actually the last video I have of working on that forklift. With the not properly running engine that I feared had some serious internal issues, as well as the transmission not functioning and just a mist of other things going on, I decided to give up on that project actually. So the reason I gave up on that thing was because at the time I had another forklift and didn't really have a need for 2 of them, although that one would have been an upgrade with the more off-road tires. I just didn't think it was worth all the time and effort that forklift was going to take, and most importantly, money. So that's not the end of the story though, because I sold it to a friend of mine for what I had into it, or actually I ended up losing a little bit of money with the carburetor and everything. Sold it to him, where he took it and had a actual Clark forklift mechanic come look at it, diagnose the issue with the transmission, which was some sort of pressure valve issue, and I think did some head work and actually got it running and working, which I have a short video clip to put here. So, I was very on the fence about posting these video series on this forklift. The footage isn't that good. A lot of really poor camera placement angles while I was working on this thing. And in the end, I end up giving up on it, which is never any fun. But I decided maybe someone would like it, and I had the footage anyway, so might as well get it out there, and maybe someone can learn from it. So thank you for watching. See you next time.